Hi friends, before we begin discussing Chapter 2, let's quickly recap the critical insights from Chapter 1. We discovered that most people don't fail to understand because your explanation is unclear. They fail because they process the world through emotion, habit, and authority, not logic. We learned that over-explaining destroys your power by turning firm decisions into endless discussions. Machiavelli taught us to sort people by behavior. Some deserve reasoning, most deserve only outcomes. We saw that when you stop explaining constantly, people test you, and if you hold your ground, they adjust. Silence becomes a filter that separates those who respect structure from those who need constant reassurance. But that raises the deeper question. If you're not explaining all the time, when should you explain? How do you use words strategically instead of reactively? We will discuss those topics in this chapter. Let's continue. Machiavelli didn't believe in silence for its own sake. He believed in timing. Here's his crucial insight. Explanation is powerful only when it's rare. When people receive explanation occasionally, they value it. When they receive it constantly, then they consider it a right. So treat explanation like a limited resource, not a moral obligation. Powerful people explain only after something has already been accepted and implemented, never before. So, think about it this way. If explanation comes first, it invites debate and negotiation. If explanation comes after, it feels like valuable insight. Most people do this backward. They explain in advance, hoping agreement will follow. But Machiavelli saw that agreement rarely comes from understanding. It comes from seeing that things move forward regardless of personal opinion. This is why powerful people often explain calmly after the fact, not to justify themselves, but to frame reality. At that point, explanation doesn't weaken authority, it reinforces it. Here's something most people miss. Explanation and reassurance are completely different. Explanation deals with logic and structure. Reassurance deals with emotion and comfort. When someone is anxious or insecure, no amount of explanation will settle them. They're not looking for logic. They're looking for comfort. Powerful people recognize this instantly. Instead of over-explaining, they shorten communication, reduce options, and simplify rather than complicate. This isn't manipulation. It's alignment. You don't speak philosophy to someone who needs certainty. You don't give strategy to someone who needs simple direction. You meet people at the level they can actually function. Machiavelli understood that explanation works best when it's selective. Not everyone needs to know everything. In fact, when too many people get detailed reasoning, the reasoning itself loses strength. It becomes fragmented, misquoted, taken out of context. So powerful people create 3 tiers. The inner circle gets full explanation, complete context, strategic thinking. Trusted contributors get partial explanation, enough to execute effectively. Everyone else gets clear direction only, no reasoning required. This creates clarity instead of confusion. It also protects valuable ideas from being diluted. When explanation becomes intentional instead of automatic, you develop a crucial skill. You start noticing who listens carefully or who interrupts, who asks thoughtful questions or who looks for loopholes, who uses information responsibly or who weaponizes it. Over time, this observation sharpens your judgment. You stop guessing who deserves access to your thinking. Machiavelli believed good judgment came from watching how people behaved once trusted with information. Explanation was one of his tools to test that trust. When you stop over-explaining, something shifts inside you. You become more precise. You speak less, but with more intention. You don't rush to fill silence. You don't feel pressure to justify every move. Silence stops feeling awkward. It starts feeling neutral, even powerful. You realize that not every gap needs to be filled. Not every question needs an immediate answer, and time itself can communicate firmness better than words. This changes how people approach you. They prepare more. They think before speaking. They choose questions carefully because they sense access is no longer guaranteed. Over time, something remarkable happens. People stop reacting to what you say and start reacting to what they expect from you. Reputation isn't built through explanation. It's built through consistency. Machiavelli observed that people remember patterns, not arguments. They don't recall your detailed reasons. They recall how firm you were, whether your decisions held under pressure, whether you meant what you said. When you stop explaining by default, people become more careful around you. Not fearful, careful. They choose words deliberately. They think before questioning. This happens because you've become predictable in the right way. Your decisions don't drift. Your stance doesn't soften just to keep things comfortable. Another shift happens. How people describe you when you're absent changes. They stop saying, "Oh, they talk a lot," or "they're always explaining things." Instead, they say things like, "Once they decide, that's it." Or "they don't waste time," or "don't bother arguing, their mind's made up." These descriptions matter more than praise. They shape expectations before you even enter the room, and expectations do half the work for you. Some people will drift away when you stop over-explaining. These are individuals who relied on endless discussion to feel important. When that disappears, the relationship no longer serves them. This isn't a loss. It's a natural sorting process. Machiavelli never tried to keep everyone close. He accepted that power clarifies relationships. Some people move closer because they function well with structure. Others move away because they need something different. What matters is that the structure becomes cleaner and more functional. At some point, you realize the real change was never about other people. It was about you. For a long time, explaining felt necessary because it gave you relief. Relief from tension, relief from being misunderstood, relief from being seen as unreasonable. Explanation wasn't just communication. It was reassurance you were giving yourself. When you stop explaining by default, you also stop asking for permission. You no longer need agreement to move forward. You no longer need everyone comfortable before taking action. This isn't indifference. It's being grounded in reality. There's a profound calm that comes from accepting this truth. Most people will never fully understand your reasoning, and they don't need to. Expecting them to creates friction. Releasing that expectation creates space. Another quiet benefit. When you don't explain everything, people can't twist your words as easily. They can't take pieces of your reasoning out of context. They're left with outcomes, not material to argue against. This doesn't make you closed. It makes you contained and protected. Over time, you become more selective with your energy. You notice which conversations actually lead somewhere and which loop endlessly. You choose differently. You disengage earlier. You protect your attention. Machiavelli would call this wisdom, not withdrawal. Power isn't about being present everywhere. It's about being effective where it matters. By now, the habit of over-explaining has weakened. You no longer feel the urge to justify every decision or clarify every misunderstanding. You let people sit with uncertainty. You let reality teach where words fail. And something becomes clear. The people who matter adapt. They learn how to interact with you. They meet you at the level you've set. The people who don't adapt were never truly aligned with you. This isn't loss. It's refinement. Machiavelli's ultimate lesson is simple but uncomfortable. Power doesn't come from saying the right thing at the right time. It comes from understanding human limits and acting within them. When you stop explaining unnecessarily, you conserve energy, you reduce resistance, you move forward without friction, and most importantly, you regain something essential: mental quiet. The kind that comes from no longer trying to carry everyone with you. You don't announce this shift. You don't defend it. You simply live it. And over time, the world adjusts. By this point, the pattern is clear, not just as an idea, but as something you feel. Conversations become lighter. Decisions become cleaner. You no longer carry the weight of making sure everyone understands every step. Power isn't something you display. It's something others adjust to. When you stop explaining unnecessarily, people don't suddenly become wiser. They become more observant. They watch what you do instead of waiting for what you say. And behavior, not words, is what shapes reality. Here's the benefit nobody talks about. You begin to trust yourself more. When you no longer rely on explaining to feel justified, you become comfortable standing by your choices, even when others don't agree, even when they don't understand. This doesn't make you stubborn. It makes you grounded. You notice how often people use conversation to avoid action. How often questions delay rather than clarify. Once you see this, you stop taking it personally. You stop trying to rescue every discussion. And your pace changes. Life moves faster when you don't stop to convince everyone at every step. Progress accelerates when decisions exist without constant explanation. Machiavelli never promised peace through understanding. He promised effectiveness through clarity. And clarity often requires saying less, not more. By now, explaining has returned to its proper place, not as a habit, but as a strategic tool. You use it when it strengthens structure. You withhold it when it weakens direction. You're no longer reacting, you're choosing. This isn't about being distant or cold. It's about respecting reality. Some people need guidance, some need structure, some need distance. Treating everyone the same isn't fairness. It's confusion. As this settles, you realize you feel less need to prove yourself, less need to be right out loud, less need to correct every misunderstanding. Your energy is no longer scattered. It's focused. And focus is one of the quiet foundations of power. So here's what we've covered in Chapter 2. First, timing matters. Explain after implementation, never before. Second, explanation and reassurance are different. Don't mix them. Third, use selective explanation to protect your ideas and build trust. Fourth, silence transforms you internally. You stop seeking approval. Fifth, reputation is built through consistency, not explanation. Sixth, the deepest benefit is self-trust and mental clarity. Machiavelli's lesson isn't about silence, it's about alignment. Aligning your behavior with how people actually respond, not how you wish they would. When you do that, resistance drops, friction fades, and things begin to work. You don't announce this change. You don't explain it. You simply live it. And people respond without being told why. If these 2 chapters changed how you see power, authority and communication. Hit that like button and let me know in the comments which insight hit you hardest. And if you want more content that cuts through the surface and reveals how power actually works in the real world, not how people wish it worked, subscribe to this channel. We'll continue exploring the dark, practical truths that Machiavelli and other master strategists understood about human nature. Because once you see reality clearly, you can't unsee it. Thanks for watching. Now go apply this.